Welcome to the Breaking the Chains. Today we're going to look at particularly about the myth they've been telling us. Now we've been told that each of these arms of government have a duty to do, a function to carry out. They talk about the judicial. They tell us this is the organ of government that is responsible for interpreting the laws. They told you that the legislature is the one responsible for the making of the law. And the executive, the telling you, is responsible for the implementation or the execution of the laws and policies and programs that the legislature has stamped its approval of. The judiciary interpret laws. Now, how is it possible that you interpreting things that you don't write? It makes sense that if you do write something, you are the only one that is able to interpret it. Now you're saying to me that the legislature, that is the National Assembly, is the one that makes laws, and then therefore they do not have the authority to interpret that which they have made. It doesn't make any sense. If they do author the Constitution, they do author the law, therefore they must have the right, they must have the authority to interpret that which they author. If I write a book, of course, I'm the only one who have the authority to interpret what the meaning of that book is. The legislature do not make any law. How do you have in your right mind to accept and believe that lie that it is the legislature that makes laws? Legislature do not make laws. Most of the people who are in the National Assembly are politicians. They do not know nothing about law. They don't have any scientific knowledge of decoding what the law is. They cannot draft anything of a law. They don't. Most of them do not sit in even a class of law to study law. Then how can you think in your right mind that these men are able to draft the laws of this country? What happened is the judicial and its class and all its members, whether they are the lawyers or they are judges or whosoever, they are the ones that draft constitutions and through the Ministry of Justice take it to the National Assembly for it to stamp its approval of the constitution, the law, or the policy that is brought to the National Assembly. So it is the National Assembly now responsibility to consent to it or to reject the draft policy or the draft constitution that have been tabled before them through the Ministry of Justice from the judiciary. The fact is, it is the judiciary that makes the laws, and it is the judiciary that therefore interprets the law. This is all a game. The game that to make you and I believe that we have a voice in the making of the laws of this country. We don't have any voice in the making of the laws of this country. All there we have is the law comes. Most of the people are ignorant of what law is. They don't know nothing about law. They don't know nothing about the science of law. They don't know nothing about the language that is used in laws. Most of us are ignorant of what the law is about. And of course, if you look at the Constitution, most of the time they tell you the literal meaning of the law usually is not what is carried to the court. The judges are the one who determines what they mean, the words mean, the phrases mean, the clauses mean. It's not you and I who knows nothing about what the clauses mean. You can read the constitutional clause and then think that it is what it means. It doesn't mean that. Go to the court, it's going to give you a new interpretation that you even never heard about. So therefore, you must not accept the lie that it is the legislature that makes laws. It is not the legislature that makes laws. All that the legislature does is to debate on the draft policy or the draft law or the draft bill or the draft constitution that is being tabled before them, debate on the purpose of the bill and of course the letter of the bill. Especially in the government context, most of these people who are debating about things, they're debating things they don't have any idea about. And if they ignorantly stamp approval of it, then of course, if it needs to be taken to the public, what do they know about law? They don't know nothing about law. So therefore, they either have to say yes or no to that which they have been presented through referendum. It's yes or no. How can I say yes or no to things that I don't have any idea about? It's all a game. It's all a scam. And then if they do approve it, then it goes to the executive for them to sign and stamp approve it, and then that becomes a law. But the truth is, it is neither the presidency or the executive nor the assembly or the legislative that makes laws. It is the judiciary that drafts laws and then have the authority to interpret that with their draft. That is the truth, and let nobody shy you away from that which is said. We have to be critical in thinking and observe the system, how it operates, and then we look at the contradiction and say, oh, there's a contradiction in that which you are trying to make us believe. And henceforth, never accept the lie that the legislature's responsibility is to make laws. No, the legislature's responsibility and duty is to act, to consent, approve, or reject the draft laws or bills that have been tabled before them. That is their duty. It's just for them to be an accomplice of the law that have been drafted by the judiciary, which are made up of lawyers and judges put together to shape the destiny and how a nation functions. When a nation is not functioning properly, it is simply because the judiciary is not functioning properly. When a nation is corrupt, it is because the judiciary is corrupt to the core. When a nation lacks justice, it is because the judiciary lacks justice.